Welcome welcome all to the SnailTrail4x4 podcast. If you like going off-roading in Toyotas, wrenching on Toyotas, camping in Toyotas, and maybe even poking a little bit of fun at Toyotas, and of course, hearing about how fantastic big levers are in Toyotas, then this is the podcast for you. That's right, ladies and germs. My name's Tyler, and joining me once again for another podcast is Mr. I can move the moon if you give me a big enough lever, Jimmy Jet. How you doing, man?
Good. I'm doing well. Thank you very much. How are you?
Doing pretty good.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Happy to hear that.
Yeah. I've got some fun things going on in my life. Something just popped back up that we've actually talked about, I think, before on the show. I gave people a quick, what was going on? Yes. And it's popped back up. So once I get a course of action, we'll let everybody know, because I think it's entertaining. It's getting to be a pain in my ass, but it's definitely an entertaining story. So
well, from what I've seen and heard, it sounds like it is a continuous revolving door and will continue to come back.
I have a feeling that's going to be the case as well.
Yes.
So I'm trying to brainstorm different ideas to finally put a stop to it for everybody involved.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So we'll see. I've got to talk to somebody tonight, and we'll see. May or may not involve the mob.
I like it.
I'm just kidding.
Hey, my grandma got checks from somewhere. I don't know where they came from. So.
That's funny. Now we'll inform you guys later on after I get kind of a course of action here. So it's quite entertaining, and I might enlist the help of the listeners for a couple fun tasks.
That could be pretty wild.
I've already enlisted the employees for a fun task because they've been having a good time with it. So,
Yep.
Anyways, we'll get into that later. Today is a Monday episode.
It is indeed.
Hopefully everybody had a great time this weekend and enjoyed themselves, got out. Hopefully if you're in NorCal, you're enjoying a little bit cooler weather this last weekend.
Oh, so nice.
God, yeah. Hopefully we're finally now getting into fall, and it's going to stick around here for a bit.
Here's my thought.
Uh-huh.
And within a week, it's going to be freezing temperatures, and winter is going to be here.
Probably, right?
Go from these 100-degree days, and then within a week, we're going to immediately be in winter.
Which I'm okay with, because that means I get to put the tracks on sooner.
That's true.
Although I still need to list them on Marketplace.
You still got to sell them. Speaking of tracks, before we jump into our main topic today, did you see Ruby Tracks has a new announcement?
I don't want to talk about this.
Okay.
Yes, I did. I'm very upset about it too. Like, I'm way more upset than I should be. Like, it's a really cool product. I'm really glad he came out with them. He needed to come out with them. They're out. I'm just mad because I'm selfish.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So you're more mad at yourself.
I'm mad at myself. Like, if he had told me that he was working on those as a production thing, I would have held off buying the tracks I bought.
I honestly don't think that Scott realized what we do until he came out here.
Really? You think so?
I believe so, yes.
Interesting. Okay.
And then he realized that it's like there's so much more potential with off-road capabilities instead of driving across a lake to go fishing.
Yep.
That's
probably, I think you're right. And you showed him the way, Jimmy.
I showed him how to get stuck.
You just perfect.
Because I came down a hill right after Nick Bailey, and Kermit went straight. The tracks dug straight down
rather than popping up
and over. Yep.
Good.
And I was in his tracks. One of them was in his tracks.
So that just goes to show that Scott did the R&D in Kermit while you were driving.
Yeah.
Therefore, I should be able to trade out my tracks for the new ones.
I would totally use that argument and see if he goes for it.
He won't go for it. No, they look great.
Yeah.
The tracks. So what we're talking about is Scott, the owner of Ruby Tracks, went on a trip earlier this year. We talked about it on the podcast where Jimmy got to take Kermit out with the tracks, and he got to ride with Scott at one point, or Scott rode with him.
Yeah.
And had a really good time. And Scott was very adamant about not building high-nose tracks for production because he didn't see the value in it.
He wanted more footprint.
Yeah.
Right. You build a high nose, you lose the footprint on the ground.
Yep. Which can be a big problem on frozen lake beds.
It can. Yeah.
And so he didn't want to do it. But then I guess that makes a lot of sense. I mean, he came out and all of a sudden after that trip, He now has high nose tracks in production.
Yeah, 6 months later or something.
Yeah, and they look phenomenal. I mean,
They look really good.
It's got a really nice high nose for it. It should be an amazing track for high Sierra snow wheeling.
Absolutely. The only problem was his picture on like YouTube and Instagram was it was on a Jeep.
Yeah. He needs to. I mean, he was out here with a bunch of Toyotas.
I know.
Last time.
Well, and some Jeeps, but
they don't need to be talked about. And that's just hide the details. We'll make history, Jimmy. Come on.
Yes.
Make the history our own. No, so yeah, they look great. And that's essentially what I'm trying to get. I've had a lot of people reach out and be like, why don't you want your tracks? And I would have to explain it over and over again.
I'm trying to upgrade.
I'm trying to upgrade to a high nose set of tracks. And so if you guys are curious what that looks like, go compare. I've got pictures of the tracks on the 4Runner on my Instagram page, and then go look at Ruby Tracks page and take a look at the difference of the front end of the tracks.
The front tracks.
Yep.
Because on that Jeep, the front tracks have the high nose, and I think the rear tracks are just normal.
Oh, they're still the same?
I believe so. Because they're two different versions.
Yeah. Okay. It would be impressive if you made the high nose for the rear. So high butt. On the rear tracks,
high knees,
high ass. I don't know. High ass tracks.
But I'm also curious if you could just somehow get the metal frame structure of his high nose and swap all your parts out from that one to the other.
That's a possibility. And since I've been debating on wanting to take apart the tracks and take all the parts apart and then go down and have our stripper strip them and re-powder coat them neon green, I wonder if I could do that. Just get the high nose frame. Yeah. And when we're taking everything apart, just put it back together with the high nose frame.
From the conversation with Scott, it sounded like the track is going to be exactly the same. It's going to be the same exact length track. All the parts are probably all the same. They're
all the bogey wheels are probably the same.
All the bogey wheels are probably the same. Everything is from a snowmobile.
Yeah.
Right. For the most part, except for the frame.
Yeah.
So if you could just get a frame, you might be able to swap it over.
I'll have to message him about that. That's really smart.
You're welcome.
Look at you go.
Now I get 10%.
Yeah. Okay. That's fair. A question for you.
Yeah.
Do you have any tricks on how to get me a cantilever system?
Yes.
Cantilever suspension.
I absolutely do.
Okay.
First off, you need a 3rd Gen 4Runner.
Fuck. Okay. What's the second off?
You need to talk to our interview today.
Okay. Gotcha. No, we got Brian Osborne here from 4Wheel Underground, owner of 4Wheel Underground, the genius behind 4Wheel Underground. He's got a lot of really cool stuff going on. A lot of really cool things in the works. We want people to talk about everything that he has in the works.
Unfortunately,
but he has launched a few things this year that we're going to update everybody on because it is some really cool stuff. And we are Toyota suspension and axle nerds and drivetrain nerds, Jimmy and I. So what better than to have another Toyota suspension nerd on the podcast?
Absolutely.
Right?
What could be better than that?
Exactly. So we're going to skip all of the housekeeping stuff today because you guys know what it is. And I want to hear more about Cantilever because we got it launched now and how that's working out. So yeah, I guess that's it, man.
Sounds good.
Everybody knows the reviews, the giveaways we got going on. So go listen to a previous episode, look at the next episode, look in the show notes, lots of stuff going on. And we'll take a quick break and we'll be right on back with Brian from 4Wheel Underground.
After we hear from Brian from 4Wheel Underground.
If you have a 3rd Gen 4Runner and want 16 inches of wheel travel without cutting into your sheet metal, check out 4Wheel Underground's brand new Cantilever suspension, featuring an integrated anti-sway bar and turn-by-dial disconnect. Don't sacrifice performance and comfort for the sake of wheel travel. Get both with our new Cantilever system at 4wheelunderground.com.
Welcome back, ladies and gentle ladies. We are here on Monday after a fun weekend. Hopefully everybody was enjoying it. I know one guy was. Do you know who that is?
No, I was raising my hand, but I guess it's somebody else.
It's definitely somebody else.
Oh, okay.
You're still digging out a tank, apparently. You're
maybe
putting salt, making a giant margarita glass. Is what you're doing.
By now it's filled.
Anyways, no, we got Brian here from 4Wheel Underground, who is always out having a good time on the weekends. Brian, how the hell are you doing, man?
I'm tired because I'm not having a good time on the weekends like you say I am.
They don't need to know. They don't need to know that.
Oh, do we have to redo this?
Yeah, well, we'll just go back over.
Over.
That's the beauty of podcasting. Start over.
Rewind.
How you doing, Brian?
I'm doing good. What's up,
Hey.
man?
Oh man, good stuff. No, we're going to be on talking about some fun things today. You've been hard at work doing a lot of different development stuff. I think we had you on the show. God, when was it now? Back in April?
It was like April, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe
Talking
May.
about some of the plans you had for this year and some of the things you were really, really close to launching. And we've gotten some of those things launched now, and they're available for people to order and get.
We've got 2 of them launched. Yeah, we've got the 3rd gen cantilever system ready to go. And then we, of course, do have the boxed skid plate with the UHMW bottom also ready to go, which, if you wanted to build a bracket for you actually could use it on a leaf spring vehicle. If you got a mini truck and you're looking for something better than just a piece of 3/8 plate that will probably bend on you eventually.
Or those fun horse collar ones, which some people use.
Ooh, why are you looking at me?
Now's your time to speak up, Jimmy. About
yeah, I use that.
I mean,
supposedly it's
some
bad.
people love them, some people hate them. Whatever, to each their own.
It got rid of a big cross member.
Yeah.
That's what's nice about it.
Yep.
But
like
supposedly it's
4.5
not
inch
nice.
one.
Yeah, but supposedly it's really bad on your transmissions and T cases because it wants all that torque is not allowed to twist anymore because I don't have rubber gaskets down there. Or
Big
rubber
soft
bumpers.
rubber bushings.
Yep.
Go to stiffer motor mounts.
Yeah. So all the stress is on the motor mounts, and rather than the transmission, everything twisting, the motor mounts kind of keep everything together.
I think the issue with some of it was the T case was rigid at that point. Not totally. It's still on a bushing. It's polyurethane. It just doesn't have. It's a much firmer durometer than the rubber bushings from the OEM at the motor. So the motor would lean over and torque and twist, but the transfer case wouldn't. And then stuff starts going crack. Basically, kaboom.
I've also seen people pull the bolts out of their rear cover on their T case.
Wow.
With the horse collar. So
I've just ripped the horse collar.
Yeah.
I literally broke.
Yeah, I broke the horse collar.
Broke the horse collar.
I used the same bushings from the T case as motor mounts, and then I didn't have an issue. So
nice.
Yeah,
Smart.
Those are actually in our motor mount kit for the 3rd gen 4Runner.
Oh,
I didn't even know you had a motor mount kit. There you go.
I do. Yeah.
There's another product we can talk about.
Yeah, all right, there you go.
Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So
Okay.
Yeah.
As in, people aren't happy with the more rigid durometer.
No, it like depends on the year you bought.
Oh.
Like there's a point where Toyota just decided they were going to change everything about the motor mount, and sometimes the thing works, and sometimes we're like, yeah, here's your money back.
Yeah.
Okay.
Interesting.
Well, cool.
We need to figure out those years.
Yeah.
I still don't know them. I get confused every now and then. It's the earlier ones that it works, the later ones it does not. So
Got it.
Okay. Well, we have, I want to talk about the skid plate a little bit because this is something that I was wanting to originally do. I know that you had this a whole subframe design built for your suspension brackets and everything. And I was like, man, I really like that idea, but I didn't want to drop everything down that far under the frame. Does this skid plate, tell us about the skid plate. What problem does it solve? Is it just a beefier skid plate? What is the purpose of it? And what are the nice things about it here?
Well, for us, our 3-link, our lower link brackets on the frame, they go right where the OEM factory cross member that would traditionally hold the transmission and transfer case are. So your options for a skid plate, like, your Bud built Marlin Trail Gear ones, you can't really use those. So you're almost forced to go to a horse collar style, and a lot of people just don't like the horse collar style. So we built one that was not horse collar that fit our 3-link brackets and solves that issue, so you don't have to worry about it. there's added strength to it than the traditional 3/8 thick plate because it's a box design like you would find on a lower control arm for an A-arm suspension, and then coated with UHMW on the bottom. So that is replaceable. So we're serving kind of a gap that we had in our own product.
Nice. So does that essentially, that UHMW coating on it, does that just kind of turn you into like a golf cart where you just slide over stuff like skipping a rock on the water?
It's like you have a slip and slide bolted to your belly. That's what it is.
Oh, that sounds fun.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and that UHMW stuff, that's that white cutting board material. I think we used black stuff, which it means it's processed or something like that, but they're the same, but it's tough stuff. You can gouge it and you can replace it if you have to, but it's so that you don't get high centered and stuck there. Like if you've got an aluminum skid plate and you land on a rock, you're not going anywhere.
Kind of digs you in, gouges the aluminum, and then it doesn't want to go.
Aluminum does not like to slide.
No,
not at all. So this is the opposite.
Be like a slip and slide on sandpaper, right?
Sure. Yes.
All right. So
the aluminum.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So you can let everybody let that mental picture get into everybody's head.
Aluminum on sandstone is kind of like pouring super glue into your hand and then putting your hands together for 10 seconds and then trying to slide them.
Okay. Perfect.
Not only a bad idea, but it's not going anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a great way to hold them together.
Yes.
So this works really well with your 3-link brackets. Is that for like the front 3-link? Is that the brackets that land there? Or is it the rear?
Yes.
The fronts. Okay.
It's the rear 3-link.
It is the rear 3-link. Okay.
I'm sorry. Did I say rear 3-link? Rewind. Okay. Redo. Hit the rewind button. No, that's the front 3-link. Sorry.
Gotcha. So the front 3-link lower frame brackets, those are the ones that kind of interfere with the stock transfer case spot.
Correct.
So, yeah. Okay. So do you make the brackets then? So how does the skid plate bolt to the brackets? Is there another like flange piece that you have to add to the brackets to bolt them on there, or?
There's a bracket specifically built to go from the skid plate to what we call the lower link buckets, which are it's the 3 pieces of metal that are actually holding the heim or the joint to the vehicle. And so it kind of captures that bolt, wraps around, and marries up to it. And it's kind of just almost like an adapter plate, if you will, from the skid plate to the suspension brackets itself. Nice.
So you don't have to have a specific 3-link bracket. You can take, if anybody's purchased a 4-Wheel Underground front 3-link, you're using the same lower link brackets on pretty much all those. So this automatically now fits everything that people have purchased already.
It does fit the previously purchased stuff. So we have 2 different frame side front 3-link brackets. It's the mini truck version, and then there's the first gen Tacoma and 4Runner version. They sit at a slightly different angle as the frames are a little bit different, and you traditionally go to a little bit wider axle first gen Tacomas and those 4Runners. So the angle changes a little bit, but we've kind of slotted some of the bolt holes there that allow you to put the skid plate to the adapter brackets so that it's cross compatible, whether or not you've used whether or not you've got a mini truck or the first gen Tacoma. The brackets and the skid plate are all the same. The only thing that would change is the actual mounting bracket to the transmission itself.
Nice. That's super clever.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Universality.
Yeah.
That was one of those ones where I think I had like 10 different versions of it before I finally said, yes, okay, this one's the one to work.
Nice.
Yeah.
How does that process normally go in your head, going back to the 10 different versions? I mean, I know you as a person, I know that you think of all these different variations. How do you reduce that? What's like your process, or what's your order of operations to figure out, determine the right one?
I mean, I've got a pretty vivid imagination. I'm good with shapes, and I can see it in my head. As someone who is a metal worker and a welder, I understand how to build stuff. So experience is a big teacher on that one. It's non-replaceable. So you can start with sketches and whatnot, but some of it you either know it or you don't. So the process of elimination at that point is just how complex are you making it? And did you over imagine the size of the space that you have to build the thing you need to build?
Right.
So sometimes, there's been plenty of times where I'm seeing it on a screen and I'm sitting here thinking, oh my God, this thing's like 30 by 60. And then you pull tape on it with the computer, you pull tape on it and you're like, oh man, this thing's only like 16 inches long. I've vastly overestimated. You know what? We don't need as many gussets, because in my head, I've got a gusset every 3 inches, but then in reality, when you go back and measure it, you're like, oh wait, these gussets are every inch. That's way overkill. So
Yeah.
it's, you're deleting that, and then you go through and you're looking at pricing and everything else, and you've got to hit some sort of, target price on the thing, but at the same time, you've got to make sure it's strong and that it's not going to let the customer down. So,
Right. And I'm sure ease of manufacturing is in the mix of that as well.
there is.
But I also know your parts and know how beautiful they are. So I know you kind of
Thank you.
veer away from somewhat of ease of manufacturing and go for more beauty.
Strength and design. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hate boxy looking stuff. and if it looks like something that everyone else is producing, my 2 cents on it is, why am I producing it then?
Yeah.
Sure.
So I definitely go out of my way to try to make things look original.
So if you don't like boxy designs, how do you feel about XJs? Just curious.
It's like driving a milk carton.
We actually have a little toy XJ in the studio here. I don't know if we've shown you this before. Grab it.
That's it. That's exactly what an XJ looks like.
Yeah. So
You know what's funny is it looks exactly like a trash can too. That's funny.
Yeah.
we found this on the ground. Look, it even has some KOH dust in it. We found it on the ground at KOH, and just somebody goes, hey, look, somebody left their XJ out on the ground here. And we just started laughing. So we brought it back and put it in the studio. But yeah, it's a little
Perfect.
mini trash can dumpster thing. So
That's awesome.
anyways, I always find an excuse to pull that out in the show.
As long as that's all you're pulling out, that's fine.
Well, we leave that for the other show.
Yeah.
So that's
Cuddle time with Jimmy.
anyways, no, so that's really cool. That's good stuff. I know that when I had my suspension, everything put together, we had troubles with the skid plate issue, just like you mentioned. And this was before you had that skid plate released.
Yes.
And so we ended up taking the the 3-link brackets, the front lower frame ones, and building a flange surface off of it, and then modifying that Trail Gear Marlin Bud built skid plate, the 3/8 metal one, to bolt up to it. And it worked, but I don't know, there's something I just don't really like about it. And I haven't quite put my hands on what it is. It is a pain in the ass to take on and off, even though it's only 8 bolts. The bolts are just tight in there and it's really hard to access them.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be better.
So one of the things that we did, sorry not to interrupt you,
Yeah, go for it.
to interrupt you, we put, we designed not hex nuts, but
Capture nuts or something, or
capture nuts on top so that you don't have to get your wrench up there. So you just access it from the bottom.
yeah. I think if I might, now that I'm thinking about this, I might take that skid plate down and either cut off all the brackets and get one of yours, or weld all the nuts to the back of the skid plate. That way we can get those bolts out. But it's a
little easier.
It would definitely be easier, but I like the idea of that UHMW on the bottom there a lot compared to just my big heavy 3/8 plate that's there. So
yeah, we're lighter and stronger. So
yeah,
Wow.
and slipperier, if that's a word. I'm not sure it is, but
you should make a T-shirt out of that.
slipperier.
We're lighter, stronger, and slipperier.
Well, I just like the idea of the
Great advice there.
Yeah, the plastic on the underside. And I don't know why more companies haven't adopted this on rock sliders and bumpers and even skid plates like you've done, because it just seems like a good solution to a problem that's out there that, nobody's really tackling. So why did you choose to add that on there? Is it just to make it more slippery?
Exactly. That's it. It kind of is it's a material that'll help deflect some of the blow on the rest of it, being that the skid plate itself is really made out of 10 gauge material. So it's not as thick to take the impact. And if you're going to put something on the bottom of it, if I put steel on it, what was the point of making it boxed?
True.
And if I make it aluminum, well, then now you're stuck to the rock. So at some point, just by sheer deduction, you're left with UHMW, which I've always loved the idea. I remember being on when I first started wheeling, I saw a buggy on one of the hammer trails. I think it was Sledge. And this guy came up and I was sitting down on a rock and the way he was positioned, I could see his whole belly. And I just saw boat sided and flat, no links, anything hanging below the skid plate, and everything was white and it was UHMW. And I just thought, that's freaking brilliant. One of these days I want to do that. So.
And here you are doing it now.
Yeah. It only took like 18 years. That's all.
Nice. That's really cool. It's a really neat product, and it does actually solve a really, I don't want to say big problem, because people have found their way around it, typically with a horse collar transmission mount or T-case mounts, but the cross member there, that's what I'm looking for. But it makes it that you have a really feasible, easy to implement option for your transfer case cross members now when you link your setup. So
Yep. And because you get to use the factory bushings, you're not forced to also upgrade your motor mounts if you don't want to, which I know a lot of people, when you go to a firmer polyurethane, something with a higher durometer, the engine and everything it transmits a lot more vibration through the vehicle. And although that's fun if you want a real sporty feel, for a lot of us who, if you plan on driving from Colorado to the Rubicon or something like that, you may not want to feel those vibrations for the entire, 20-hour drive. That might just wear on you a little bit. Yeah. So there's that option too.
Yeah. So you said you also have that skid plate option that can work with leaf spring setup?
Well, the brackets themselves aren't specific. You can just buy just the skid plate itself as an option. And so if you've got leaf springs, feel free to, if you build your own bracket off of the frame to capture the skid plate, Gotcha. You can use it too. It is not mandatory only 4-wheel underground front 3-link. So
okay, nice. That's cool.
Yeah, and even if you had another 3-link, if you had, say, a trail gear one on there, you could possibly use that as well.
Nice.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Sweet. I like it.
Yeah. So, really good design. Really clever the way you did it. I'm excited. I'm going to get one before I fully put together Samantha. So I'm excited to get it in my hands and feel its strength and with that 10 gauge and
it's girth.
It's girth.
Is that what you were going to say?
I was. And then I looked at you and I was like, I can't say that word. And then you ended up saying it anyway.
I love how I can read your mind sometimes and you read mine.
We've been podcasting together too long. I think that's our problem. But I'm excited to get it and throw it onto Samantha and slide across some rocks for sure.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Let's do it.
Well, since we're talking about Samantha, do we want to go into some axle talk real quick?
Ooh.
I do, because I want to know how you guys came to this conclusion. I'm a big fan of this conclusion because ever since going wider axles myself, I'm like, everybody needs to have super wide, obnoxiously wide axles if you're going on a rock crawl. But anyways,
yes.
What brought this up for this discussion about taking Samantha to wider axles?
I just can't bear the thought of anyone using mini truck axles. They're so tiny.
Okay.
That's exactly how he approached me too.
Really?
With that soft, supple voice of his.
Please.
He just said, we could get you wider axles. And he kind of batted,
totally it.
batted his eyes at me over the phone.
My eyes.
And I said, let's figure this out. Because I really...
Can you see me blinking through the telephone?
Yes.
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Yeah. Come on.
And I straight up told him I don't want to spend any more money on this. Like, I
said no.
No. And then he called.
I had to call him twice and be like, Jim.
He called me a week
not
later.
Doing it. No.
And we sat down and we did some math and we looked at options and we did some axle research on WMS. And we just talked a bit about FJ80 axles, and then we talked a bit about diamonds and what could work with that. And yeah, so we eventually ended up going with the diamond front axle housing. And we're going to still use the 8-inch ring or third member and the mini truck burr fields and balls. And then we're matching that with a T100 rear axle, which is only a 1/4 inch narrower WMS than the diamond one.
Nice.
Yeah.
I didn't realize how wide the T100 axles were.
Yeah.
They are in the back.
I did not either until this wise man across the computer from us told me so.
Yes, there is a website called, I think it's Round Forge.
Yeah, that one's so good.
And they've got all of the Toyota axles listed out in width, and I believe they're pretty darn accurate in what they say they are. So it's a nice resource if you're just trying to match up and find something that works for you. So in this particular case, since Jim's already got the third members, he's got the burr fields, he's got the housings, any axle that you would normally have picked would have meant that he's buying a whole new third member. And that was kind of like a no bueno here. Like, why? I already have this. How do we make it work? And I think we ran through different ideas of like 3rd gen 4Runner rear axles, Tacoma axles, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd gen stuff. All the Land Cruiser stuff's 9.5, so you can't really do that. We looked at the FJ80 axle, which is 8-inch, so that works there. But then because the burr fields are bigger, now he's got to get new inner shafts, new burr fields, plus
knuckles.
now you get knuckles on top of it, and so at the end of the brakes and it's just like it snowballs so quickly. So if you're on a budget and you're just wanting wider axles but still use the Toyota components that you have, we did a diamond front at 67 inches passenger drop. It'll come with the X amount of caster and pinion angle tweakage that I like to use, and then we match it up with a T100 rear diff that still uses an 8-inch diff, but because you can pick up the housing with the shafts and the brakes from the junkyard for I think like $400,
$400,
$400. It makes the rear axle upgrade a no-brainer. I mean, it's I don't want to say it's free, but in consideration of how costly rock crawler upgrades are, $400 is stupid cheap.
Yeah, it really is. And we've been talking a lot about axles lately and Super Duty axles compared to Dana 44's Toyota axles. I really like this option for you.
Yeah.
Samantha's not going to be a heavy vehicle, so it doesn't need 1-ton axles. It doesn't need this big beefy stuff.
Right.
And it kind of goes right into what we were talking about in that Dana 60 versus 44 episode is, what the main benefit for going really big is if you need beefier components because you either have a ton of horsepower or a lot of weight, and Samantha's not going to have either.
No,
so
it's not. It's a light vehicle. It'll probably be on 40s, but we've kind of proven that as long as you don't have a heavy foot, 40s on a mini truck axle are okay.
They work great. I had 40s on my mini truck axles, and I overloaded my 4Runner multiple times.
Yes.
Like I'm one of those overloaders, right, when I go off-roading. So I think it's going to work awesome. I really like the option of the T100. I do remember them being 8-inch ring gears, the 8-inch platform. I didn't realize they were that wide though. So I love that option.
Yeah, they're crazy wide.
Yeah.
67 inches. I think that's wider than any Toyota axle for the most part, besides newer Tundras.
Yeah, any of the later model stuff or older model stuff. So
it might be the same width as the 1st gen Tundra. I think it's the same.
Maybe. I know the 2nd gen Tundra is 71 and a half, I think, something like that.
Is it that wide?
Yeah, they're wide trucks. that rear axle. Yeah. Cause I was looking at the second gen Tundra, just pulling one of those rear axles. I actually have one up on a shelf back there I can measure. But yeah, I was looking at that and I was like, nah, I want a housing because I didn't want semi-float. That was the big problem with that rear axle. So that's one of the questions I wanted to ask. Would there have been, like, could you have done a Dana 60 option with a diamond front housing Toyota? I know that you can get some 10.5 Sterlings for pretty cheap right now and then do a shave kit on them. And then you would get a full float in the rear. Was that an option to think about, or was...
Well, I bought Super Duty axles front and rear, and my rear end cost more than the front end.
Wow.
Yeah. That's interesting.
I had them shipped to I think it was $1,800 delivered for.
Yeah.
And the rear end was like $200 more than the front end. So
really? Interesting.
Yeah, I don't know why. I thought that was ridiculous, but whatever.
Yeah.
You know.
I think the problem with 60 is that I have to get a locker and ring and pinion. And not only do I have to buy the axle, but then I have to change the gearing, and I might even have to change the gearing in the front of the front third member to match.
You may not be able to run 529s or whatever the gearing is. Yeah.
I might have to do.
Also, would you have had to have messed with your master cylinder, your brake master, for the bigger brakes in the rear? I know you have to do that with the front. If you go to a Dana 60 front, most guys will upgrade their brake master to a GM just to push more fluid more quickly. But do you have to do the same in the rear? So that's another added cost to it.
It's a good question, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Either way, I love for $400 a T100 axle. I think for this application is magnificent.
I think it's a fantastic option. I think that a few $100s to get a more or less axle that I can, with minor fabrication, I could get up and running with no problem.
Yeah.
Because to my knowledge, I didn't think they had any e-locker versions.
Oh yeah.
So because I'm going to add the Toyota e-locker back there, I'm going to have to cut it out and make it anyway. But I'm going to have to do that on the front as well.
Yeah.
So, and I was planning on doing it on front and rear of the mini truck axles. So it's just a thing that I was going to have to do anyway.
Yeah.
But
same amount of work.
Yeah. Same amount of work.
Yeah.
There.
Yeah.
Okay. So now into questions for you, Brian. How does running wider axles impact the suspension plan for Samantha? Because I know you and Jimmy have been talking a lot about the plan for Samantha, what you guys were going to do, and how it was all going to be done with mini truck axles. So how does that change stuff now with these 67 WMS compared to a 58 WMS?
Well, the width of the axle specifically kind of, other than the obvious wider is more stability, it kind of helps with your, I don't want to say it lowers your roll center, but it changes the angle of the force from the roll center down to the tire. So it it has a similar effect of lowering a roll center, which just means you get more traction. You'll get more traction on the street around the corner, but you'll also be more stable off-road for the obvious reasons, but also because of the direction of the push and pull from the roll center to the contact patch. So it's
is that essentially just because you essentially have a bigger lever coming off of your fulcrum of the way an axle articulates?
No, it has to do with the center of gravity yanks on the roll center.
Okay.
Believe it or not, when you go like whether it's a side hill or the street, okay, if you go around a corner or you're side hilling, the body leans off to one side. That's pulling and leveraging against your roll center.
Okay. Yep.
Okay. And but your roll center is basically kind of fulcruming, as you said, down to the tires. So there's a direct line of path from your roll center to the contact patch.
Okay.
Now, the steeper that angle is from the ground up, the more likely you are to roll. So anytime you can level out that line, the more stable you are.
Gotcha. Okay.
Because if you
that makes sense.
Think about it this way: if you're pushing down with 800 pounds of force on one tire, you're also pulling up with 800 pounds of force on the other tire. So it's kind of like if you're trying to tip over a beer bottle or a dinner plate, which one's easier to tip over?
Yeah. The dinner plate.
Obviously.
We're standing it on edge, right? That's what we're talking about. I'm just kidding. I'm just here to cause chaos, Brian.
I know this.
No, that's okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I just figured that it was just more stable. I guess that does the same thing. It's just the way you worded it.
You kind of inherently know it anyway. But when somebody says it, and you have that aha moment. You're like, oh my god,
that's what's really happening. That's what makes it stable. Yeah. Gotcha. Okay, that's cool. So is that going to change a lot of how? Because right now the plan for Samantha is a front 3-link, rear triangulated 4-link with trailing arms.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Is that going to change how all that is packaged very much? Is that going to make the geometry more stable because it's able to get out wider now on the brackets? How is that going to impact the geometry of everything?
It's not going to affect the geometry. It is going to just generally affect its stability. He's going to have a shit ton of articulation, way more than he would have before. And with trailing arms, you're obviously going to get a lot, but because your shocks are on the trailing arm, everything after the attachment point from the trailing arm out is just a benefit that you'll see in articulation, even if you don't see it with straight up and down droop. So it would definitely compete with like the cantilever system that we kind of touched on the last time I was here. So, you've got 16 straight up and down, but when you go to articulate it, you're hitting 24. He's going to be in the same boat.
Wow. That's that's impressive.
That's going to be fun.
When you have trailing arms with a shock mounted to the arm rather than your axle, you mentioned that it's not a linear change, right? It's a what are those called?
Compounded?
No.
Motion ratio.
Motion ratio.
Motion ratio. It's a motion ratio, right?
Yeah. Like a lot of the IFS guys in the Baja stuff, they'll call it a motion ratio. So it's just easiest to keep the terminology the same. But it's basically if the shock's moving an inch, the wheel's moving 2, or whatever the motion ratio happens to be. But you can manipulate. You can do a lot with those. You know. So they're more bueno as long as you don't try to get too greedy with them.
Okay, so what happens if you describe what would be an example of getting greedy, and what happens when you do get greedy with them?
Greedy is when you're chasing wheel travel for the sake of wheel travel.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
and it ends up biting you in the butt because like on an A arm, if it's a 2-to-1 ratio and on a 1-to-1 ratio you had a 300-pound spring, on a 2-to-1 you're going to need a 600-pound spring.
Okay.
That has other effects on rebound, but also the compression itself. So it can, a spring loading up, the 600-pound spring loaded up is got a ton of force in it.
Yeah.
So, and then on with the cantilever stuff, guys, traditionally why cantilever does not work in rock crawling is because everybody's chasing wheel travel. And so they're trying to get every last drop of travel out of it, but they're not taking into consideration that there's 2 ways you can screw it up, one on the shock and one on the shackle. And so it's a double whammy. And if you're just looking at, well, I've got a 8-inch shock, I want 16 to 18 inches of wheel travel, you're probably in the doghouse on performance.
Okay. That makes sense, because then you're overextending the shock, and shocks have gotten really good in the last decade or so, but there's still a limit of you don't want to fully extend a shock and fully compress it every single time, right?
Well, no, I wouldn't say that at all. I think we all do that with our coilovers and even our shocks on leaf springs. We're because we are chasing wheel travel, like you're not a rock crawler if you're sitting on 6 inches of travel.
Mm-hmm.
But what it has to do with specifically is whether or not your wheel is traveling at the intended ratio you started with, and it's not digressing into something where you've got wheel travel, but your shock's not moving. And it's called digressive movement. And it's basically, let's say you started off with a 2-to-1. Your tire moves 2, your shock moves 1, but then as it slowly gets to the fully compressed section, your tire's moving 4 and your shock's moving 1. So suddenly what that means is your shock is half as effective as it used to be. So instead of progressively getting stiffer, because your suspension should be really, really soft when it's fully extended, and it should be as stiff as possible as it's ever going to be when it's fully compressed.
Okay.
That maintains a progressive system. If it's real light at the point of full extension, and then at mid-stroke, you've reached the apex of how stiff it is, and then it starts getting softer. Now it's digressive. Now you have valving issues, and that's a result of chasing too much travel. The angles become negative instead of positive, and now you're screwed. Now it doesn't work for you. So you know, like myself, I sacrificed wheel travel to make sure the shock didn't become, and the axle movement didn't become digressive.
Nice. Okay. That's good to know. Cause I mean, yeah, you definitely at least in the rock crawling world, are there any vehicular recreation sports where you want digressive shocks?
No.
Okay. Yeah. I was trying to think, I was like, maybe in like rallycross, but even then, like the more that the wheel is moving in rally, you don't want it to move softer and move more as you get into more cornering. I'm like, that doesn't make sense.
Right. Or think if they did a jump.
Yeah.
Right. And they land and all of a sudden it's really stiff and it then gets super soft on the, as they're going through their suspension.
Yeah. Okay. So that makes sense. You would always want more progressive valving in your shocks for sure. Okay.
And guys will try to band-aid it with like longer bump stops, or when they, you'll change your dual rate, you go really light on top, really stiff on bottom. And you start playing with where the spring, that crossover nut on your coilover engages your slider so that your lower rate kicks in quicker. And then that combined with longer bump stops, but the whole thing then just gets real messy real quick, and that's traditionally why it doesn't work.
Gotcha. All right, so we were mentioned a little bit about cantilever and motion ratios and what you have set up on the cantilever. I was going to say something else about wider axles. Anything else to do with wider axles and how it might impact with suspensions, or is it just mainly stability all around? Is wider axle something that really everybody should be looking to do? Like, is it good in all applications, or is there any applications where narrow axles might be better? Or
I mean, if you got two trees that are too close together, then narrow axles rock. But other than that, I would stick everybody on a mini truck on a 64 to 66 inch axle if I could.
All right. So you think that mainly everyone's staying narrower just because either A, they don't know better, or they just don't want to put in more time fabricating or creating something? They just have a stock Toyota axle ready to go and they just throw it under?
I mean, there's any number of reasons why somebody would go with a narrower one. Sometimes they just don't know that wider is better. Sometimes it is they live in Washington. Sometimes it doesn't fit in the trailer. Who knows? Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm excited to see Samantha on wider axles.
Yeah, me too.
My dad's truck has the 67 WMS diamond axles under it, Toyota mini truck inners, and they do great. He's only really ever had one issue in the 12 years he's had the truck. I think he blew a rear ring gear, and he blew that Burfield
out in Moab.
Yeah. But otherwise, they've been bulletproof. They've been great, and he does have a heavier truck because he has his whole frame plated and almost flat belly.
Double cab Tacoma.
Yeah. But nice. I think you're going to love them.
I do too. In regards to going wider though, I'm assuming the answer is yes, but is the geometry the same at the axle? Like, do I need to change axle brackets?
Well, we're going to change out your axle brackets for the Diamond because we do have specific purpose-built axle brackets with the kit. And that's one of the reasons why we've actually got our suspension builder page off the homepage. We'll pull it up so I don't misspeak. But if anybody's looking for the suspension We've got a section that says Explore Suspension Systems. It's the green button right in the middle, and it will walk you through step by step, ask you what vehicle you have. Are you looking at front suspension, rear suspension, which axle and what side you want the upper link on? It will walk you through all of that. And at the end of it, when you get to the suspension page, there's a bunch of choices. So you click on whatever you want. You can buy as much of it, basically a la carte, if provided we offer it that way, which we offer a lot of different options. So if you want to make your own links, there's an option to not buy links. If you want to not include shock towers, there's an option for that. So there's a lot there. I would encourage people to go play with that, go look at it, because it will do a lot for you when you're checking all this stuff out. We have specific axle brackets for the 1 ton, the Super Duty, the FJ80, the mini truck, and the Diamond.
Wow. That's really good that you guys implemented that, because that was always one of the things when, we were speccing out our suspension components last year with you. I was like, you have a ton of different options, and I didn't know much about suspension other than center pins on leaf springs shear off. Like that's So having that, something that can help people walk through what they have and what they're looking to do with their vehicle, and have it spit out a couple of narrowed down options for them. That's awesome. I didn't realize you guys had implemented that. That's cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk some cantilever talk, shall we?
Okay. I'll try.
Hey, how long have you had this idea of cantilever in your head to come out with a cantilever suspension?
Going on 5 years now.
5. Wow. Has it been just kind of working with different designs, or like you said, just kind of spatially working it out in your head because you're good with shapes and objects?
My holdup was the swaybar.
Ah, okay. How do you package the swaybar?
Getting it all to function the way I want it to, and getting all the components to do what it's supposed to do.
Okay.
So that was the hard part. The rest of it was just kind of, I started with photograph. And I traced out the photograph onto a piece of paper, and I knew a couple of measurements, and then just started scaling it out. And I think I went through about 15 different versions on where to put stuff and how long to make it before I found a spot that would work. But the I don't want to say the inspiration, but one of the driving factors for me was the photograph was of a customer's vehicle, and the bumper wasn't on, and I saw how much room was behind, underneath, tucked in on the side of the bumper, and went, I'm pretty sure I just found my cantilever donor.
That's cool. And so that was a 3rd gen 4Runner, I assume then?
Yeah, it was. Yeah. And I've got a 3rd gen, but I didn't take the bumper off. And so when I saw the picture, I had that aha moment and said, okay, that's what we're doing.
That's cool. Yeah. We've always joked around about it, how big of a booties that 4Runners have. I mean, they stick out. There's a ton. It's nice because there's a lot of cargo room inside, but they got big booties on them. And if you're going rock crawling in a 4Runner, you got to protect those booties with armor and bumpers and good stuff back there. But that also means there's a lot of room under there. If you can remove the spare tire under there and and then just make use of what's underneath those quarter panels.
Yep.
There's a lot of space under a 4Runner that you can do some fun things with.
Well, here's the cool part I mean, as if the cantilever wasn't cool enough, but because we kept the coilovers on the outside of the frame, I shouldn't talk about it, but we've got a gas tank that is going behind the axle. No, we're the 3rd gen 4Runner sets itself up perfectly. We're building a gas tank with a skid plate, fits around the cantilever, but you don't have to have the cantilever, and it uses the factory fuel module components and everything, plugs into the tank. And because of where the 3rd gen 4Runner fill hose is, it sets itself up perfectly to use a rear mounted tank. So we're going to have X amount of gallons. I won't say yet because I have to confirm it, but there'll be a gas tank back there. So if you want to do a 4-link on it and you don't want to 3-link it, or you want to maybe put two gas tanks. You know, you've got your factory one and that one. So now you've really taken your third gen and turned it into a long distance vehicle, maybe.
How close does a third gen 4Runner chassis and everything work out to a second gen 4Runner chassis and body? These are the tough questions, Brian.
You knew this was coming.
Actually, had I thought about that ahead of time, I probably would have just kept my mouth shut. They're not really that similar. I mean, they're not way far away, but they're also not similar. So
okay,
yeah, you would have to do a little bit of work. I know.
Because that was one of my always one of my pipe dreams was to do the 4-link on the rear and then put the gas, do an F-150 gas tank up between the frame rails up above the axle.
That thing's like 20 gallons. I'm getting more than that.
Oh shit!
And you don't have to buy any additional fuel pump, nothing. It just like use your Toyota stuff. Like if you've got a third gen 4Runner, this drops in. You just literally unbolt it, plop it in the next tank. Okay.
Wow.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I wonder
how that works in California law.
Yeah, you can be able to get it. That's true. You can be able to get it stamped for California. The tank.
Sorry, what? We're having a connection issue. We're breaking up there.
Yeah, unknown at this time.
Yeah. All right.
There's no way I would ever even try. I asked one time how much it would cost to do that, and I think it was
ridiculous.
It was close to $250,000.
Holy shit! Wow. I wonder if they make it that much just to keep people from wanting to do it. Or if it actually costs that much for all the labor hours they have to go through to test and make everything. I was like,
no way.
No way.
I think they charge like $10,000 an hour or something stupid.
Yeah. Wow.
That's ridiculous.
Crazy. So that's an intriguing idea, though, to set it up as an extra fuel tank. Do you know if there's anything in California vehicle code about that being a thing? Like, can you put in and keep your stock tank, but then throw in an extra tank, and that has to be kind of certified or anything like that? Or
I don't know of anything.
I don't know either.
No, I'd be talking at my butt if I said anything on that one. I would suspect they probably would not allow it. They'd probably grill you on that one and say it has to meet the same criteria that your factory one does.
Yeah.
They probably don't want you carrying too much gasoline at once.
Right.
Whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah. But I thought you were going to go with, well, maybe I can just make a really small primary tank that looks so that nobody notices it, and I'll put Brian's tank in the back, and that way I can set it up with a 4-link.
Get a little 8-gallon gas tank out of a smart car or something.
Yeah.
Put that in.
Or just have a dummy vehicle that you end up dragging out to smog, and then you take the. I didn't say this. I am not liable for my actions.
Or you move out of state.
Yeah.
Or you move out of state. Yeah, I don't have to worry about any of that, so I don't think about it anymore.
Nice.
Yeah, it must be nice.
Yeah,
it is really nice. Yes.
That's great. All right, so Cantilever. So you have this really cool thing coming out for the third gen 4Runner that nobody's really done for Toyota vehicles yet. There's been a couple. Has anybody done like a mass produced cantilever? Like everything I see from cantilevers all seems to be custom hot rod stuff.
There's a lot in the hot rod. There's some in the supercar world, but rock crawling, no. There's been some Baja stuff, but that's definitely not mass produced. So
I saw a Baja build the other day that had one on it. Yeah.
Yeah, I would imagine Baja would be interesting because cantilever seems like a way more complex setup. There's a lot more moving parts. And so would it be something that Baja racers would really want in their vehicles to have more parts that can go bad? Or is that a myth that is worth busting right now?
I think that's one that you just have to ask the individual. You know, so much of Baja is just pure inspiration or, you know, trying to solve a problem. That I think it's up to the individual. I mean, some guys say no, but I mean, you also got to ask yourself, is the vehicle or the build truly a competitor, or are you building it for fun? You know, I'm sure the top guys that are into it for like, they want the win. They're probably taking the less is more approach.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point too. There's definitely people who, I mean, from talking to all of our Ultra 4 racers that we've had on, there's definitely people that approach it as, no, we're either winning or we're out of the race. Like there's no in between here. And then there's definitely people that are like, oh no, like we got through tech. We're happy, man. We're super excited to be here. Like that's their goal, is to get their vehicle teched and get to the starting line. Yeah. So no, that's a really good point. So with Cantilever then, what is the main benefits of Cantilever and doing Cantilever over a traditional 4-link or traditional 3-link, and how everything is packaged and set up with one of those?
Well, it's not really the 3-link or the 4-link versus the Cantilever. It's more the coilovers poking through your sheet metal. And so it's really a
packaging coilovers.
It's really, it's just packaging, you know, you a 10-inch shock is not worth buying on a solid axle. If you're going to, if you've got independent suspension, you've got a 10-inch shock, you're probably looking at 16, 18 inches worth of travel, somewhere in that range. But if you take a 10-inch shock and you slap it on a straight axle, you're getting 10 inches of travel.
Yeah.
So the Cantilever one allows more travel, but it allows for packaging that is not protruding into the sheet metal. And if you own a 4Runner, you probably bought the 4Runner over the pickup truck for a reason. So
to preserve cargo space, because we're lazy. We don't want to weatherproof everything, Jimmy.
It is. I mean, I see it all the time. I mean, I see guys poke through with the coilovers, and they're notching the front. They notch the sheet metal. They box in the sheet metal, recarpet it, all that work. And I did the same thing.
Yeah. So, and you get the same result out of the suspension performance. Yeah. So that's one of the main things I wanted to point out with the Cantilever setup, is that you're not changing the geometry of your links. You can still use your 3-link or your 4-link. Your geometry of your links and locating the axle is all still the same. There's no real change there. It's mainly just in the coilovers. So this would be something that you can get your Cantilever set up, and you're not having to fully change the entire suspension of a vehicle.
That's true. That's true.
So that was kind of the main point, where, because I've talked with a few people before, and they're like, I don't want to redo my whole suspension again. And I'm like, no, you don't have to. That's kind of the point of this.
Yeah. No, well, we're offering it separately from the rest of our suspension products for a reason. We don't want you to be, it's not a mandatory you buy 4-wheel underground link geometry, brackets, arms, and all that, and then the Cantilever. So if you've got someone else's, or you're going to do your own, we're trying to make sure that it works for you on that. So,
that's really cool. Again, universality, right? Like we were talking about earlier. Yeah,
absolutely.
That's neat. So I have under the 4Runner, and I believe what my dad is getting under his truck is the underbed coilover mount system.
That is correct.
That you have. How does Cantilever differ from the underbed system? Because the underbed system still accomplishes getting coilovers under there without poking holes in your sheet metal. So what's the benefit? What's the benefit of the Cantilever over that system?
Those systems, because of the way whether they're on the Bronco or one of the Jeeps or our underbed system, they all have a reduction in wheel travel from the shock itself.
Yeah.
So if you start off with a 14, you're not getting 14, you're getting like 13.
Yeah.
So, and it comes with the cost of, you have, just like the factory stuff, you've got brackets that are hanging below the axle. So it's going to act like a anchor at some point. It's going to stop you. I did my best to make sure it looked like a boat and not an actual anchor.
Yeah.
But
they're pretty rampy. They're nice, but
they're rampy, but they have their drawbacks. That's a, call it a poor man's Cantilever in that regard, because it's a hell of a lot cheaper, but it's just not going to be as good. It's not going to net the same travel or the same performance.
Yeah. Okay. So you really get Man, so if I'm thinking about, I'm trying to like think of comparisons to put this into perspective for people, right? So my 4Runner, I've got 12-inch coilovers on the rear with the underbed mounting system. And I can get right now fully articulated out on a forklift at 7 PSI in the tires. I can get 43 inches from corner to corner, right? So if I pull up the front driver tire, leave everything else on the ground, I can get about 43 inches under that tire, which is already really impressive.
Yeah.
But I'm only getting 12, maybe 11 inches of wheel travel out of the rear, quote unquote, of droop and travel. So with the cantilever setup, if you're doing a 10-inch shock and you're getting, what were your measurements that you're getting on the shock and wheel travel?
10 and 16.
10 and 16. So with that setup on the 4Runner, I could theoretically get another 5 inches of travel out of the rear from what I'm getting now.
Well, straight up and down.
Straight up and down.
Talking, both sides simultaneneously, like you were going to jump it. Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean,
articulated, it's more than that. Yeah.
So even though the because my axle width is the same, it's not a changing variable between those two setups. I would get even more articulation than just the change of shock travel between the two setups, even though my axle doesn't change width.
Well, the change in wheel travel of just the straight up and down is going to also net a result in your articulation as well. So for you, I would say you could safely estimate another 10 inches worth of articulation easily.
What?
Dang.
Easily. Yeah.
Oh, that's crazy. Yeah. That's nuts.
That'd put you close to 5 feet of articulation.
Holy crap.
A freaking lot.
That's a lot.
That's a lot.
Holy
Just so
crap.
you know.
Yeah. Wow. I was already amazed going from my puny little, I thought I had pretty decent articulation on the leaf springs, and then going to your 3-link setup and the coilovers. I was like, holy crap, I doubled my articulation.
Yeah, baby.
And then you're saying we could get it even more. That's just crazy. Wow. I'm just putting that into perspective. I'm a little speechless as to how much more that would net going to that system, a cantilever system. So how much you mentioned that it's a lot more expensive to do a cantilever versus the underbed system. How much more? Are we talking double, triple, quadruple?
Oh, yeah. You're probably looking at 7 or 8 times.
Wow. And
you're talking like $800 to $5,500.
Oh, wow. Okay. So, and that doesn't include the coilovers, right? Is that just the cantilever, the lever arms, and
does not include the coilovers? No, that's just the bracketry. That's
just the bracket,
and with the sway bar though, that does include an anti-sway bar with it.
Gotcha. Yeah, and that's nice because I think when we had to spec out my sway bar, and I think I spent another $800-900 on the sway bar, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
And the arms, the sway bar and arms and everything. So
we're looking 1,600 ish.
Yeah, I would say I would guess 15, 16 to 55.
Yeah. That's maybe a touch more.
But there's so much more cool stuff going on with the cantilever.
Well, I would say it's easier to package and set up than trying to do more independent systems by themselves. Sway bar plus the underbed. It's one system you're setting up. It's all done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is fair. So there could be something said in the time savings, especially if you're having somebody else install your suspension on your vehicle and they charge $200-250 an hour or something like that, whatever, for fabrication. Then
where are you shopping? Jeez,
there's some expensive shops here in Sacramento, man.
Holy cow.
Well, when you have Tyler money, it doesn't really matter where you go.
That's
oh man,
he's up there. He's rivaling Chris money nowadays.
Yeah. So I don't know. There's a time aspect too, right? Time is money. So
absolutely,
if what you're putting together saves you time or saves you having to pay somebody else's labor time, there's definitely value and money in that too. So
I mean, that was kind of the inception on our idea for retaining the factory bushing location on our Super Duty kit for the front end. Was just that those things are a massive pain in the butt to try and carve out of there. So let's just use it. Why not?
I just assumed that the Super Duty radius arm brackets were just a bracket welded to the housing, the tubes of the Super Duty axle. The short side is forged with the pumpkin center section.
Dang.
Cast.
Sorry, thank you. Cast with the pumpkin center section.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Having to cut that thing, I was looking at it because one of our employees, Bend Over, bought one of the Super Duties from LKQ, and we got it in here at the warehouse, and I was like, how are you going to cut that off? He goes, I think I'm just going to keep it. I'm not going to mess with it.
Massive pain
it's
in
huge.
the butt.
Yeah.
Well, I got a plasma
YouTube
cutter.
videos of guys will sit there and take like 8 hours just to remove those two brackets from or I should say portions of casting from the housing.
Yeah.
And then they still have the rest of the freaking housing to do. So
yeah. Yep. So
plasma
anyway,
cutting is cool when you first do it, and then after like 10 years, you're like, fuck this stuff.
Nice. All right. So you have it for the 3rd gen 4Runner. Do you have any other vehicles in the works now? Like what's next on your to-do list for the cantilevers? Or are you just looking for people to be like, you need to do this next, and looking for feedback on which ones to go with?
3rd gen pickups.
No comment.
All right.
He's going to make it for the G.
That's it. I'm all about the CJ. Bring it on.
Yeah.
The freaking, what was that? The museum vehicles?
Yeah.
Now we got a
call them.
CJ5 in here with like an 84-inch wheelbase, and we're going to long travel that with trailing arms that are like 45 inches long. It's a great idea.
That's like putting Chevy 63 leaf springs front and rear under a mini truck or something.
I've seen it.
Suzuki Samurai, baby.
There you go.
Perfect. Well, we haven't really touched on the sway bar so much. So shall we talk about that? Because it's a really cool way that you've set this up, integrating the sway bar into the cantilever suspension, and then you have a little trick up your sleeve with that as well. Why don't you dive into that?
So I am proud to say we are using a Brannick sway bar.
Nice.
Because we have found them to be probably the best sway bar you can buy. They're a little bit pricey, which is why it costs what it does, but they have a phenomenal reputation for making a top quality product.
Brannick makes some really good stuff. Yeah.
Yes. So we are using their sway bar, and what we did is we built a system where we have a turn by dial, basically kind of like a hub disconnect for the sway bar. So you can, kind of like having a mullet, it's business in front, party in the back. This is, it's kind of similar, you just turn the dial, disconnect the sway bar, and go do whatever you want to do. Or if we've gotten you, the right sway bar, because we can get different diameters in if you've got a particular request, maybe you don't have to disconnect it at all. You can just leave it full time engaged. That's also a possibility. So, but we're giving everybody the option on that one.
That's nice. Yeah, I always laugh watching Jeepers hammer their sway bar disconnects on and off when they're getting ready for a trailer, getting done at the end of the day, or they have to, they try and get it aligned. They can't get it back aligned. So they have to go move it just a little bit to get the vehicle more leveled out and then hammer it back on. And it just seems like such a pain in the ass. And this seems like a genius way to set up sway bar disconnects. So
thank you.
Yeah, kudos.
That was the charge. That was the hard part on this thing. So
yeah,
that's really cool.
It's really a neat idea, and the simple on off, if you want it, makes sense. Is there going to be a on off switch on either side or both sides, or only one side?
At the moment, it's only on one side, but you can install it on, if you prefer it on the passenger side for some silly reason, then go for it. Yeah.
Cool. I was more asking because once Tyler gets one, I want to be able to turn it off on him
on
randomly.
And off.
Yeah.
There you go.
I was just about to bring that up. I was like, be careful. Your friends are going to turn them off on you.
Yes, they are.
I was going to, when I was setting up my axles, I'm using the 05 and up Super Duties on all four corner, the unit bearings, right? And I was going to put the selectable hubs in the rear. Just because, why not? Because I can.
Oh.
And then I started thinking about it. I was like, no, my friends are going
who do I hang around with?
Unlock my hubs every chance they get on my rear axle.
I totally would.
Exactly.
I would be right there doing it.
He'll be in first gear and can't go anywhere.
Why don't they have 2-wheel drive?
My drive shaft spins, but my rear tires aren't moving. What's going on?
It's my poor man front dig. Okay, leave me alone.
This thing was working yesterday, I swear.
Yes. Yeah. Too funny. So swinging back around to the suspension side, what did you call the difference in motion and articulation on like IFS?
Motion ratio?
Motion ratio?
Motion ratio. Yeah.
What is
mechanical advantage?
Yeah. What's the motion ratio of the cantilever?
It's a 1 to 5.
1 to 5. Wow.
Yeah. 1 to 1.5, I guess you would say.
Oh, okay. 1 to 1.5.
Not 1 to 5. 1 to 1.5. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Got it. So it's not quite 2 to 1. So it's 1.5 to 1.
Not.
Okay. Got it.
So,
cool.
Yeah, I had a suspension tuning friend basically tell me 1 to 1's too fast on the piston. You got to be careful on that. And obviously we wouldn't gain any wheel travel if we did a 1 to 1. You'd actually still have 10 inches of wheel travel.
Yeah.
2 to 1, we had digressive motions on everything, and our tuners basically said that's as far as you would ever want to go on your motion ratio as a 2 to 1.
Okay.
You're doubling your spring rate, you're doubling your compression valving, your everything just goes up.
Sure.
And honestly, it didn't package well. So a 1.5 to 1 was kind of where we landed, and it works pretty darn nicely.
Nice. And so it wouldn't package well because you would need to make I'm going to call it the lever arm. I don't know, the cantilever arm longer.
Rocker arm.
The rocker arm, it would need to be longer for a 2 to 1.
Yeah. The rocker arm, with the section that attaches back to the axle, it would end up being even longer. And so it would be harder to package. We were having contact tire issues anyway, with the rocker arm contacting the tire during articulation. So making it longer actually would have caused it to be even worse.
Those will just self-clear. You'll be fine.
That's it.
You need to get those self-clearance. You need to get those 67 axles.
Yeah, exactly.
I think we got to say there was a 65 on there, and it was rubbing. It was very sensitive to how wide the tire was. We had some BFGs on there, and they were like, I think 13 and a quarter, 13 and a half, and they weren't happy. We switched out to some Toyos actually, and everything was hunky dory after that. It loved it. So
nice. The Toyos are 12 and a halves.
I think they technically measured 11 and a half, but they're called a 12 and a half, but then the BFGs were called a 12 and a half, and they're 13 and a half. So
yeah, but same rim,
same wheel. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, same wheel.
All right. That's interesting. Yeah. Good old tire manufacturers playing with their stats again.
Yeah, I don't know what's up with that.
As a machinist or somebody who does very intimate with machining, how does that make you feel that there's that much of that there's that much variation in tire?
Are we having cuddle time again?
I mean, Jimmy's always open for cuddle time. Okay. Yeah.
Tyler's the one on the couch right now, though.
Tires are tires. They've always been that way. You know, you order a 37 and it's 36. You know, or some guy, you know, other places they say, hey, it's a 38 and it comes out 38 and a half. So I don't know. Okay.
I just know machinists can be very picky about their numbers sometimes. So they.
I have a bit of that. Yeah, a smidge.
Nice. Well, cool. Anything else fun that you guys are coming out with that we can tease people about, maybe, or give a little insight or anything that we missed maybe in the past couple months?
I seriously have so many different products I am working on, but it is too early for me to let the cat out of the bag.
Gotcha.
I know I said something about a 3rd gen Tacoma last time, but that one's a little bit on hold, as it is an extremely different kind of product than I have ever built before. So yeah, that one I just have to ask everyone to be patient with.
All righty. Then we will continue to be patient as much as we can. I don't know. Jimmy's like over here peeing himself with anticipation over that one. So
a little bit.
The moment I am confident it is ready for release, you guys are the first ones I'm calling. So
Perfect.
yes.
Tyler,
Run speed dial.
You need a 3rd gen Tacoma now.
Trying to get rid of this Bronco, man.
And a 3rd gen 4Runner.
what?
It sounds
You
like.
don't like the Bronco?
I'm not happy with the Bronco. It's
What?
the technologies, the off-roading technology in the Bronco is amazing. I will give them credit for that. They did a really good job there.
Okay.
I do not like the creature comforts. I think they really missed a lot of the creature comfort features in the Bronco. I have issues with the air and heat system. I have issues like the speakers are like, it seems like they only used tweeter speakers in the whole fucking vehicle. There's no depth to the sound. Yeah. I had the window motor stop working on me. So with the Bronco, there's no door window frame, right? Like on a normal door that the window rolls up into. And then that frame is what sits up on the vehicle. With the Bronco, the window rolls up into the top, the hard top or the soft top of your Bronco.
Right.
And so every time you open the door, the window pops down a half an inch to clear that. And then when you shut the door, it automatically pops back up and seats into your top. If that stops functioning, then the window doesn't close and a ton of water comes in the vehicle when it rains. So there's, I've had some issues now with the creature comforts and the thoughts put into the Bronco. Like my 2013 F-150 had way more creature comforts than the Bronco does.
Really?
Yeah. And the Bronco's a 2023. So 10 years, and they did a good job with the off-road performance of it, but the creature comforts are, they missed the ball, I think, a lot. So
the cup holder's in the wrong spot.
yeah, they're not, I'm not too thrilled with those.
It's not big enough for his coffee mug.
Yeah.
Doesn't fit the big gulp.
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
They put the handholds down low everywhere. There's no up high handholds,
Yeah, that's true.
which is really annoying when you're off-roading. So, I don't know. It's just
You're glued to your seat, but your head's in the window.
sometimes. Yeah.
Does the AC button not light up when you press it?
It didn't for a while. We had to get that fixed.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, my 3rd gen Tacoma doesn't have a freaking dimmer switch for the lights on the dash.
Interesting. So
Really?
there's no way to dim the lights at nighttime?
Not on the dash. No, you have to go into the touch screen and
dig
into
through
the
the
stereo
settings.
system, and it's got 2 settings. That's it. Normal and low, and that's all there is.
Huh.
I've never played with that.
Yeah. Interesting. Anyways, yeah, I don't know. I've been trying to talk the secretary into letting me offload the Bronco and get something else. But
You want to keep going on this saga?
yeah, let's keep going. Shall we?
Yes, feel free. What can you want to lay down on this couch?
If we're gonna have a therapy
How does
session,
that
totally.
make you feel? I charge by the hour.
Cantilever for the Bronco, that might make me want to keep it. I don't know.
I have no problem. I would love to do Broncos.
All right, I'll bring it.
Ford, if you're listening, I need some files. You send me some files, please.
Right.
It sounds like you can get a Bronco pretty cheap. I don't know what you're talking about. Sounds like somebody's looking to offload one right here. Trade him for the Tacoma.
There we go.
He's actually thinking about it.
Thinking about it.
I mean, my wife doesn't really like it, so she hates the damn thing. So
Mine, unfortunately, likes the Bronco. So yeah, what you gonna do?
Oh
well. Anyways, so yeah, that's some cool stuff. I'm glad to hear that you're coming out with some new stuff, that you have a lot of things in the work that we'll get to nerd out over with you. Looking forward to those.
Oh, yes.
If people wanted to check out the skid plates, the cantilever, anything else we talked about today, where can they do that at, Brian?
Check out 4wheelunderground.com.
Awesome. Go through the suspension I don't want to say builder. It's not really a builder. Options provider.
We do have the suspension builder section that you can check out if you're looking to really kind of build a shopping cart for yourself and you want to know what it's going to take. Other than that, go to the product section at the top. And if you're looking for information and pictures on how the stuff installs, check out the resource section at the top of the page.
Awesome. Sounds good, man. Thanks again for taking the time and coming on the show and talking about some cool stuff you guys got going on. And we're always looking forward to having you on the show and nerding out over suspension stuff. So
thank you. Thank you for having me on. Appreciate it.
Yep. Yeah. Jimmy, how can people get a hold of us if they want to?
Yeah, you can find us on Instagram. I'm over at SnailTrail4x4. Tyler's over at 4x4 Toyota Tyler. You can email us, Jimmy or Tyler at SnailTrail4x4.com. Or you can phone in and be a part of our snail mail episodes. And if you have any questions for Brian, we can maybe get him to phone in and then answer those questions, which might be a fun little way where Tyler and I could play middleman.
Yeah.
And you can do that over at 916-345-4744.
Sweet. And then also there's the 4Wheel Underground Instagram has a lot of really awesome pictures on it showing what your suspensions can do, as well as a lot of some cool pictures of how the cantilever is working and operating. So
absolutely.
Yeah. Some really cool posts you've been doing there. So kudos to you on that. If people want to check that out, definitely go check out 4Wheel Underground on Instagram as well. So
and Facebook.
Cool, man. Awesome. Thanks for coming on. Brian, do you have any final words for everybody out there today?
No cuddle time for Jim.
Oh, Jimmy's going to cry. Jimmy, any final words to follow that one up?
I'm very sad.
With that, my friends, keep crawling.
Oh, that's funny.
Hey, I heard that Jimmy has jokes.
I do.
Yeah?
I do.
All right, let's hear him. I need a good joke.
Do you know what type of fish performs brain surgery?
The sturgeons. The neurosturgeon.
Neurosturgeons.
Okay.
Did you see that?
No.
You just got that?
Yeah.
Wow, good job.
Sturgeons are badass fish, dude.
They are.
They're essentially dinosaurs.
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
They're huge.
Yeah.
Yep. The neurosturgeons.
Yeah. Nice.
They're the smartest fish out there.
Are they really? Or are you
no,
just...
they do brain surgery.
Okay.
I mean,
got it. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
I don't know what the smartest fish out there is in reality. I don't know. An octopus? That's not really a fish.
Yeah, they're not fish.
They're not fish. But
I would probably say one of the sharks. I think sharks are considered fish, aren't they?
Yes.
Whales are not considered fish.
No, they're a mammal.
Yeah, because they actually breathe air.
And give live birth.
I would say a shark would be one of the smarter fish.